So I'm talking to Daphne about my cars, and in walks Aaron. And I'm like, God, he's back. What'd you do, man?
Well, I basically just worked in the house.
Amazing, amazing cars. You are a magician with what you built.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. You know, it's like I love them all for completely different reasons, and I really like cutting them up.
Most people know Aaron Kaufman as the quiet, bearded genius who stood next to Richard Rawlings on Fast and Loud and turned impossible deadlines into beautiful machines. But what most people do not know is what actually lives inside his personal garage. The things he built purely for himself.
You know, I don't think so. I've got some things I've been wanting to do for a while, and we've been building cars, we've been really busy. There's definitely a different direction I want to go, and here I just can't do both.
The project's driven by obsession rather than a television schedule, and the racing machine he drove up one of the most terrifying roads in America. What is hiding in Aaron Kaufman's garage is far more impressive and far more surprising than anything he ever showed on television. Join us as we break it all down.
So what's happening with your show, man? What are you doing? What's the latest?
Oh, shit, you're just gonna go right for the big one, huh?
Let's get in there, man.
All right.
First of all, I love your show. I've been loving it for years. It's fun. And I'm a giant muscle car fan, so it's right up my alley.
Everybody hold on to your hat out there. Fast and Loud is no more.
The boy who took everything apart to understand it. Aaron Kaufman was a straight-A student growing up, which surprises many who know him primarily as a mechanic and fabricator. He was academically capable enough that college would have been a reasonable path, but his family did not have the money to make it happen, and so he joined the workforce as quickly as he could instead. He was 16 years old when he took on his first proper car project, a Jeep Cherokee that he customized and repaired himself. And the experience of turning that specific vehicle into something better than he had found. It was the moment he realized that the thing he loved doing was also something he could do for a living. He worked in a machine shop after finishing high school, teaching himself the specifics of metal fabrication through hands-on work rather than formal instruction. He had no teacher standing over him explaining the theory. He had materials, tools, and the kind of focused patience that either develops naturally or does not develop at all. What he learned during those years was not just how to weld, cut, or bend metal into the shapes he needed. He learned to think in 3 dimensions about structural problems, to understand what a vehicle needed beyond what its existing components provided, and to work backward from the result to understand what the process of getting there should look like. He has described the philosophy that guided his work from the very beginning as treating fabrication as a craft rather than a job. He made a decision early in his career, which he has talked about in interviews, that if this was what he was going to do with his life, then he was going to commit to getting better at it every single day, absorbing as many techniques as possible, and never treating any project as beneath his attention or any problem as not worth understanding properly. That mindset is what built the collection of machines that now sits in his garage, each one a physical record of a specific obsession at a specific point in his development as a builder. But if the philosophy started young, the first serious personal vehicle in his collection came from an era that most people associate only with television. So, what was the first machine he built purely for himself? And what did it reveal about where his real interests lay? The 1963 Ford Falcon that almost killed him at Pikes Peak. The most famous vehicle that Aaron Kaufman has ever built for his own personal use was not an F-100 truck. It was not something that came through the doors at ArcLight Fabrication as a customer project. It was a 1963 Ford Falcon that he built specifically to race at one of the most dangerous motorsport events in the world. And the story of what he did with that car reveals more about who he actually is than anything that appeared on Fast and Loud. The Pikes Peak International Hill Climb, known as the Race to the Clouds, is a 14-mile mountain race in Colorado that gains over 5,000 feet in elevation on the way to the summit. The road has no barriers in many sections, which means a single mistake at speed can send a car and its driver over the edge of a mountain. Kaufman first competed at Pikes Peak while still at Gas Monkey Garage, using a Falcon he had built himself as his race car. He entered the race multiple times with this car and described the experience as one of the most terrifying and exhilarating things he had ever done. The Falcon he built for those races was a serious piece of engineering rather than a television prop. It was powered by a naturally aspirated 363 cubic inch V8 engine, making approximately 500 horsepower, fed by a 750 cubic feet per minute Holley carburetor that Kaufman noted preferred 100 octane fuel. The transmission was a Super T10 4-speed unit. The rear axle was a Mark Williams trussed 9-inch unit with 31 spline axles and 2 interchangeable center sections, one geared at 4.00 for tighter sections and one at 3.00 for higher speed stretches. The car was fully certified to run both at Pikes Peak and on public roads. A race car that was also legally drivable on the street, built by one man's hands, powered by an engine that could take him up the side of a mountain faster than most people would be comfortable attempting. He eventually sold the Falcon at auction on Bring a Trailer. The listing described it as offered in as-raced condition, with rock chips, cracks, and minor dents that reflected honest use rather than neglect. It had raced the Big Bend Open Road race once and competed at the Pikes Peak Hill Climb 3 times. The bidding reached into the mid-60,000s before the sale closed. A hand-built race car that had actually been raced up a mountain was sold in the condition it was found in after the race, bought by someone who understood what they were looking at. The fact that he sold it is itself revealing. Kaufman has repeatedly demonstrated that he is not attached to vehicles as possessions the way most car collectors are. He builds things to understand them, races them to feel what they can do, and then lets them go when a new challenge presents itself. The garage is not a museum. It is a working inventory of problems he has not yet finished solving. And the Falcon was only one chapter of his racing story, because after selling it, he went back to Pikes Peak with something completely different. A vehicle that he has described as one of the strangest and most ambitious machines he has ever been responsible for. So what did he build to replace the Falcon on that mountain road? The old smoky F1 and the 1949 that defied common sense. When Aaron Kaufman returned to the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb in 2022, he brought a 1949 Ford F1 pickup truck, nicknamed Old Smoky, and he drove it up a mountain road where modern race cars with aerodynamic packages and carefully engineered suspension systems regularly find themselves in serious trouble. The F1 is one of the earliest generations of the Ford truck line that eventually became the F100, and the version Kaufman used at Pikes Peak was not a gentle restoration. It was a modified, built, racing-prepared truck that looked deceptively simple from the outside while hiding the kind of engineering underneath that only becomes visible when you watch it move. Kaufman has described the F1 project as one of the purest expressions of what he finds interesting about building. The idea of taking something that has no business performing at a certain level and then making it perform at that level anyway, not by hiding what it is, but by understanding it deeply enough to change what it is capable of. The choice of a 1949 truck for a mountain race is the kind of decision that tells you everything about a builder's character. There is no commercial logic in it. There is no television hook in it. It does not position him as anything other than someone who finds the specific combination of old truck and dangerous mountain road genuinely compelling. He went up that mountain because he wanted to know what would happen if he did. And the racing history does not stop at Pikes Peak. He also competed in the Speed Energy Formula Off-Road Stadium Super Trucks series, driving a Toyo Tires-sponsored truck at the Sand Sports Super Show in Costa Mesa, California. He ran 2 rounds that weekend, finishing 5th in both heat races before posting a 10th and an 8th in the feature events. During one of those races, his truck rode up on a K-rail barrier in a moment that was described by fellow driver Robbie Gordon as some of the best, worst driving he had ever seen. Kaufman laughed about it afterward. That combination of genuine competitive ambition and complete willingness to acknowledge when things go wrong is characteristic of how he approaches everything. Now that you understand the racing machines, you might be wondering what else is taking up space in that garage beyond the track day vehicles. Because the most interesting thing about what Aaron Kaufman collects is not the race cars. It is the daily drivers and the project vehicles that reveal what he actually finds beautiful. So what does the man who builds extraordinary machines choose to drive on an ordinary Tuesday? The daily driver and the F100 obsession that defines everything. Aaron Kaufman's relationship with the Ford F100 is not a commercial strategy. It did not start when he founded ArcLight Fabrication and identified a gap in the parts market for 1957 to 1979 Ford trucks. It started decades before that, as all of his deepest interests did, with a specific vehicle that represented a specific moment in his development as a builder. Among the vehicles in his personal collection, the one he has consistently described as most significant is a 1968 Ford F100 short bed. This particular truck represents, in his own words, the very first steps he took toward becoming a fully committed gearhead. It is not necessarily the most powerful or the most technically sophisticated machine in the garage. It is the one that carries the most personal meaning, which is not a distinction that most builders make out loud, but one that Kaufman has been unusually honest about when people ask. His daily driver, at least as of recent reporting, is a modified 2004 Ford F-15. Oh, that he describes as a permanent work in progress. He is actively modifying it toward a vision that he has in mind, but has not finished executing. This is characteristic of how he generally lives with vehicles. They are not finished objects that he admires from a distance. They are ongoing conversations between him and the machine, with the machine telling him things about itself that he responds to by changing it. The F-150 in his driveway is probably not the same F-150 it will be in 2 years, because that is not how Aaron Kaufman relates to the vehicles he owns. The Ford F-100 trucks that ArcLight Fabrication specializes in building and supplying parts for represent the same philosophy applied at a commercial scale. The shop produces aftermarket suspension components, lowering kits, engine swap kits, chassis parts, and wheels specifically designed for the 1957 to 1979 F-100 platform, which had been significantly underserved by the parts industry despite having a passionate and growing owner community. Kaufman identified the gap not as a business opportunity first, but as a problem that bothered him personally. The parts he wanted to buy for the trucks he wanted to build did not exist in the quality or configuration he required, so he made them himself and then made them available to everyone else who had the same problem. The business is essentially the commercial extension of his own frustration as a customer. The shop has moved premises since it first opened in Grand Prairie in 2017, relocating to a larger space in the Dallas area to accommodate more projects and a growing team. The move happened quietly, which caused a brief panic among fans who saw the original location closed and assumed the shop had shut down entirely. It had simply outgrown its first home. And the F-100 community that surrounds the shop is not just a customer base. It is an active community that Kaufman has helped to build through events like the Fun 100 Run, a 2-day road event through Texas back roads designed specifically for F100 and F1 owners, where the point is not competition, but the shared experience of driving these trucks through country that suits them. He brings the community together because he is part of it, not because he manages it from the outside. So now we have the race cars, the daily drivers, and the community trucks. But there is one more category of vehicle in Aaron Kaufman's world that most people never expect from a man known primarily for American trucks and hot rods, because he has also worked on one of the most unlikely high-performance machines in the entire automotive world. So what is the one project that shocked even his most devoted fans? The Ferrari F12, and the builds nobody expected. The image of Aaron Kaufman is so closely associated with American trucks, hot rods, and the specific culture of Texas fabrication that the idea of him working on a modern Italian supercar seems almost deliberately contradictory. But contradictions are often where the most interesting things happen, and the Ferrari F12 project is one of the most revealing pieces of his story precisely because nobody expected it. He collaborated with the team at Daily Driven Exotics on a twin-turbo Ferrari F12 build, working with partners at Life Motorsport and Sierra Cars. The end result was a 1,200 horsepower machine built around one of Ferrari's most powerful naturally aspirated engines, with a forced induction system that catapulted it into a completely different performance category. This is his only documented modern supercar build, and it sits as an anomaly in a body of work that is otherwise entirely focused on American vehicles from the mid-20th century. The Ferrari speaks the same engineering and fabrication language as the F100. The materials are different, the tolerances are tighter, and the failure modes are more expensive. But the fundamental questions being asked are the same. He has also worked with Sierra Cars on development projects for their single-seat, center cockpit recreational vehicles, testing prototypes at Pikes Peak, and providing feedback on their dynamic behavior. This kind of development work is the opposite of the television fabrication world in almost every way. It is slow, iterative, technically demanding, and produces no dramatic reveals or satisfied customers on camera. It produces knowledge, and Kaufman has consistently prioritized knowledge over performance. The shifting gears era produced several more surprising entries in his build history. During the show's run, he and the ArcLight team built an International Scout into a street-legal Ultra 4 race car for the King of the Hammers event in California, one of the most punishing off-road races in the country that combines desert racing with technical rock crawling. They built a Subaru Impreza rally car from the ground up to compete in the Olympus Rally in Washington State, entering a discipline neither Kaufman nor his team had any professional background in. They built a semi-truck with automotive specialists Bob and Justin Ball and raced it at Pikes Peak International Raceway, where the truck began falling apart during competition, and Kaufman kept racing it anyway. They also built a Model A dragster and a Harley WLA to compete in the Race of Gentlemen, a vintage beach drag race that restricts its field to pre-1953 vehicles. What connects all of these projects is the specific kind of challenge each one represents. In every case, Kaufman is working in a discipline he does not know well, building something he has not built before, and competing in an environment where the failure modes are real and sometimes dangerous. He said during the shifting gears era that going out in a rally car and making a mistake might mean you come home in a pine box, and he said it with the matter-of-fact tone of someone who had genuinely thought about that possibility and decided the experience was worth it. The builds in his garage are not just beautiful. They are evidence of someone who has spent his adult life walking toward things that made him uncomfortable and working through the discomfort. His estimated net worth sits at around $8 million, reflecting the combined income from the Gas Monkey Garage years, the television deals for Shifting Gears, and Aaron needs a job, the ArcLight fabrication business, and the various development and consulting relationships he maintains with companies, including Life Motorsport and Sierra Cars. It is a comfortable number that has not changed how he operates or what he chooses to build. He was driving a modified work-in-progress F-150 as his daily car, while most people in his financial position would be driving something considerably more ostentatious. He appeared at the 2024 SEMA Awards and announced a new show in development connected to American custom car culture, teaming with actor Noel Guglielmi for a project that would explore car culture in a broader sense than his previous solo work. Whether the project reaches screens and what form it takes when it does remains to be seen, but the announcement confirmed that he has not lost interest in communicating what he does to an audience. He has just been selective about the circumstances under which he is willing to do that. Which project surprised you most? The Pikes Peak Falcon, the 1,200 horsepower Ferrari, or the 1949 truck that went up a mountain? Do you think Aaron has ever regretted the way things ended with Richard? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.